This is the critical thing. This is the thing that I think I figured out about the Nismo Z. So this week I have the 2025 Nissan Z Nismo edition, and I've had the Nismo before, and I think like a lot of people, my main complaint about the Nismo was I was just like, I just don't think this makes for a good daily driver, but I think I actually might have figured out a way that the Nissan Z Nismo does make sense. So stick around and hopefully I can convince you by the end. All right, so the Z has been out for quite some time now, so I don't need to go on and on about the styling, but if there's any kind of car in this category where I think the styling might have grown on me and I think is going to age well over time, I think it's gonna be the Nissan Z, especially in this Nismo trim. I love the way this looks. I really like it in white, which is unusual. I don't normally like a white car, but I think in white with the black accents and the red trim, it looks fantastic. And when you think about the other cars in this sort of category, namely the Toyota Supra, you could include the BMW M2, and you know, at the Nismo's price, this one is $70,000, which we'll talk more about in a second, because that's part of my play. Yeah, that's part of my like convincing you about this car, about how it might make sense. Not at 70, we'll get there. But I think this one is going to age well. I really do. I think Nissan did a good job with the styling. I love the rear end styling of the Z. And over time, it has become more of a treat because, let's be honest, they're not selling super well. And so it's almost more of a treat when you do see a Z on the road versus the Supra, which like comparatively is kind of more common, especially around here in Atlanta. So I like this. I love the Nismo look. And I think that overall, when you're talking about styling, yeah, the Z is pretty great. Okay, so if you didn't know, one of the things that sets the Nismo apart is that the 3-liter twin-turbo V6 is uprated to 420 horsepower and 384 pound-feet of torque. So that's about a 20, plus 20 increase on both sides. Now it's running through a 9-speed automatic transmission. More on that in the driving portion. I know that people don't love that, and I don't disagree, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in the driving. Now, from a performance standpoint, this one also gets bigger brakes. It gets the lighter wheels that you get in the performance trim. I think the unique here, Dunlop Sport Max tires, and a limited slip differential also that you have in the performance trim. So this thing has some serious kind of like upgrades, as well as a stiffened suspension. Definitely talking about that more in the driving portion as well. So for $20,000 over a base model Z, are you getting 20 grand worth of upgrades in the Nismo? I don't know if I would argue that, but you are getting some substantial upgrades. So it's not for nothing. Also, I think when you look at it in Sport Plus settings, which we'll talk about in a second, that's where some of these upgrades start to make sense. And they only make sense in the way that I'm about to, well, try to justify it. I think I've sort of figured out the Nismo Z. So let's talk about a couple of the downsides. They've been well reported. First of all, this thing, the suspension is ridiculously harsh, right? I mean, things like the Supra, obviously the main competitor, it rides very firm. But the Nismo Z is kind of like on another level of firmness. And we're based in Atlanta, where the roads are like relatively smooth because the weather's relatively mild. So even when people complain about the Atlanta roads up in the Northeast, any of you guys that live in the Northeast or the Midwest, the roads are way worse, a lot more cracks and imperfections than down here. So we're on a relatively smooth road right now, and it's not that bad. But when I was driving it this past week, in daily driving, there's just too many places where the roads aren't, perfect, and there's construction and stuff, and it rides really harsh. Like it's
they're gonna see that from the camera bumping up and down.
Yeah, like you can probably tell to a certain extent. And we're on a smooth road, so to say this could be a daily driver, I would really hesitate to say that this could be a daily driver. It's just it's borderline punishing in daily driving. Now, the payoff from a performance benefit is that it does handle pretty well. Like compared to other cars, like you can, when you turn it up, and this is the critical thing. This is the thing that I think I figured out about the Nismo Z. When you drive it like an a-hole in sport mode and stuff, it really does become quite fun. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it into Sport Plus mode. you immediately, the transmission goes into like crazy town. Like it starts holding gears, it downshifts the minute you stand on the brakes, it doesn't want to upshift. Like it's good. I mean, for the 9-speed automatic, I know that's one of the biggest things people complain about this car. Oh, it only comes in an automatic. Yes, it does only come in an automatic. There's rumors that there's a manual coming, and I saw them reported in some of the magazines, and then it's kind of evaporated, so I don't know if it's actually coming or not. But for now, it's 9-speed automatic.
Oh.
And yeah, that bridge right there, that wasn't even that bad of a bridge.
Looks good
but
on camera.
when you put it into Sport Plus mode, right, it's almost like it doesn't have adaptive dampers or anything, but now it's sort of like the harshness kind of makes sense because everything becomes pretty twitchy, right? So like the steering is like incredibly sharp. The throttle tip in is almost ridiculous, borderline ridiculous. When you start tipping into the gas pedal, it's almost too sensitive because it immediately goes into it and then it wants to hold the gears. And because you have that extra 384 pound-feet of torque, well, it's not extra 384, it's like extra 24 or whatever. But because you have a little bit more torque on these Dunlop Sport Max tires, which are very sticky when they're hot, these are like summer kind of track-focused tires, you gotta be a little bit careful. If the tires are cold and you're not kind of like paying attention, it'll tip into the acceleration so fast, the rear end will just break loose and start squirming around. So it sort of lets this thing off the leash a little bit. And I think when you're driving it that way, I drove it home from work a couple times and I left it in Sport Plus and just kind of like hammered it around and had a huge smile on my face. I was like, okay, this is like a lot of fun. Like it's almost cartoonish and it gets a little raw in a way that the Supra doesn't. The Supra maintains its composure a little more and the Z is willing to kind of get stupid. And I think that's kind of a fun characteristic in a sports car like this. Like the Z looks good, right? And the Nismo Z, this color scheme looks awesome. The white with the black stripes and the red accents and the black roof, like it looks great. And so it's kind of fun that it unleashes you hear the exhaust. This is like the best, V6 sound that Nissan's ever made, at least recently. And it sounds good. It goes like stink. It has that kind of like fun aspect that makes you like that downshift right there. Like I'm braking for a stoplight up ahead and it just immediately blips the downshift. Like I want to play, let's play. And I think this is the way to drive the Nismo Z. Yeah, it does. It does sound like a manual. I literally had to look at the thing
and I was like, oh, it's a manual because it feels and sounds like you're driving a stick over there.
Yeah, well, and it's doing it as good or better than most people. Well, if you were driving a stick and you need to downshift and you were kind of in race mode, you would blip the throttle like that, right? And a lot of cars with manuals now have automatic rev matching. Now, some people that are more talented than me will complain, be like, oh, I want to rev match myself. I am admittedly not that talented, right? Like I got big old feet and my clumsy feet have never learned to rev match on downshiftings, not like heel and toe correctly. I can't really do it. So I appreciate when cars do that. Now this thing is an automatic, it does it for you, which I think is pretty cool. And whereas the Supra ZF 8-speed is praised for being one of the best automatic gearboxes on the market, this is not that far off, especially in Sport Plus mode. I mean, it's very impressive. And if you put it into manual mode, it'll give you shift lights on the dash, which is another like highlight of the Z, I think. I like the Z's gauge cluster a lot. I think it looks cool in the performance mode that I have it in right now. So like when you drive it like this, like hold on.
Oh jeez.
Like it's fast. It's not crazy fast, but it's fast enough. And when you are going in those low speed accelerations, like kind of from a standstill or whatever, this thing can be tons of fun. A lot of fun in Sport Plus. Yeah, you're holding on to the camera, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing the best I can, bro.
Yeah, and you come through some of these curves and you don't really worry about anything. The Z feels planted. The Dunlops are sticky. And now the suspension kind of makes sense. This is how you would expect it to feel if you were like whipping this thing around. In day-to-day driving, you're like, oh man, this is a lot. This is harsh. But on a road like this with some curves, smooth, you're like really getting after it. Power feels good. Now, the Nismo Z, I'm like, yes, now I'm vibing with it. Now it makes sense, right? And that's what I found out this week. Like, I feel like as a daily, forget it. Just forget it. The ride is too harsh.
Forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it. Forget about it, which doesn't make sense because it's a Japanese car. I don't know why we're doing Italian.
It does remind me.
Yeah. But listen to the downshift. When you come down, and there's a little one there. We take this turn, floor it. Oh, there it goes. And that engine sounds good. That sounds so good. And this is a freshly paved road that we used to call this the handling road, and then they repaved it. Now it's not the handling road anymore. Now it's just a nice road. But like, that makes sense to me. This thing suddenly has the character that you want it to have. If you bought this and had to live with it every day, I don't think you would be happy. I think from a driving perspective, you'd be like, ooh, this feels like a sports car that got turned up just a bit too much. It doesn't have that like magical ability, especially with cars that have like the adaptive dampers, like the Corvette's magnetic ride, or Porsche's, like kind of Cayman S models, where they just have that magic ability to do double duty, where you can drive it every day and be perfectly comfortable, or turn it up and like really attack like a track or a back road in it. This thing ain't it. This thing cannot do that. But if you're just attacking the track or the back road, this thing can do that. And when you want to take it out of the garage and drive it around, there's a car coming, but you know what? I'm going to go anyway because I can.
I knew you were going to.
And that's the other thing. In Sport Plus mode, these shifts are almost like ludicrously hard. Like it like punches you in the back with the shifts. In fact, I would say they're almost like cartoonishly hard. That's sort of the character of the car. It's kind of this big cartoon.
Oh, nice
That's
blinker.
a great blinker there.
You're gonna have to edit that out.
Yeah, we'll edit the cursing out at the person with doesn't use blinkers.
Hang on, let me cough.
Here's the thing from behind the wheel. If you treat this car like the cartoon that it is, and I think the styling, the graphics, the driving characteristics, everything about this car is a bit cartoonish. If you're into JDM,
Even the screen is like really big.
yeah,
like the little icon.
I know,
or
or for whatever reason, CarPlay on this screen, which I don't mind honestly, because
No,
it
it
makes it
just
easy
like fits
to
with
hit
the
it.
cartoon.
Yeah, but everything about this has sort of been turned up, and now the Z has grown on me more than the Supra has over time. I think. I think also when we wrap this up, maybe I can make a value argument for this that doesn't necessarily endorse the Z from buy it as a new car standpoint, but maybe if you wait a couple years, this becomes an incredibly enticing option.
That dude just looked at your car.
Yeah, he did.
Making me a little car sick, bro.
Sorry, bro. Oh yeah, another performance thing that I would want to mention is the brakes. One of the things that impresses me about this car, and this was a complaint about some of the old Zs, and this car is essentially based on the same platform as the old Zs, which is why it weighs 3,600 pounds, which is a little bit, yes, that's pretty fat for a car of this size. And when you factor in that the C8 Corvette, which is mid-engine, weighs around the same, the BMW M2 only weighs a little bit more than this, but has more power. And the Supra weighs 3,400 pounds, which is this car's direct competitor. So this thing is carrying around another 200 plus pounds than the Supra. But brakes, this thing has some pretty good brakes. And that was a complaint people had about the old Zs, the 350 and the 370, is that in the higher performance model, specifically, I believe it was the Nismo model, the brakes would fade and wear out. This thing, I've stood on them pretty hard a couple times, and it feels good. Would it stand up to track duty? Maybe with some high temp brake fluid, but definitely an improvement over past Nissan Z models. Oh, real quick, I want to point out, 10 cubic feet of storage back here, which is actually not that bad.
I was gonna say, it looks pretty big.
Yeah, it's a little bit flat, but it's more than the Supra. The Supra's like 6 or 7 cubic feet. And if you think about it, the Mustang's trunk, and I think the BMW M2 as well, only get around 13 cubic feet. So from a usability standpoint, the Z has slightly more cargo space than those cars. Now, one downside though, as you know, we sort of talk about in the driving, is that you might not want to use it in that way, like daily driving, but like if you were so inclined, you could fit some stuff back here. I am 6'6", and I can fit inside of the Z actually pretty great. And these Recaro seats that are unique to the Nismo trim, these Recaro seats are awesome. Now they don't have a ton of adjustability, like a comfy kind of multi-way seat. You can go forward and back, you can do your backrest and lumbar, the critical stuff, but you don't get all the little nuances. It's like, yeah, they're gonna hug you tight. In fact, the bolstering on the side here is so tight that like it actually pinches my butt a little bit, and I don't have a big butt. Do I have a big butt? I don't have a big butt. No. So, they're pretty snug if you're a bigger person. But I love the driving position. The gauge cluster in the Z, I think looks pretty fantastic, especially in performance trim. And it's got a bunch of different readouts for all of your critical performance information. This is the sort of thing that I think people undersell on the Nissan Z. There are these sort of functionality aspects to it, and maybe on the lower trims, if you were getting it as a daily driver, there's things about it that are just great. That driver information cluster with all of that performance data is super cool. And on the Toyota Supra, you can't get that on the dash. You can get some of it on the center screen, but you can't get it on the dash. But on the Z, you can get it on the dash right in front of you. And I think that's like really smart. Also, the 9-inch infotainment display is running Nissan's older system, but when you put CarPlay on it, it's like massive, right? And so when you're sitting here, it's a really easy reach to do all of your CarPlay settings. I really like the interior of the Nismo. You get the Alcantara like this weight on the steering wheel, these excellent seats, the driving position is good. I've got plenty of headroom. In fact, I got a little bit more than I do in the Supra. So once again,
Fits the stand.
Oh, the Stanley? Yeah, if you want to put your Stanley in the Z, it fits the stand. And if you're buying a Nismo Z, like what more could you want? All right, so try to make sense of this with me, okay? I'm gonna try to justify this like overall package with the Nismo Nissan Z. $70,000, it's gonna be a no. It's gonna be a no for me at $70,000. However, I looked up on, kind of like Google searching used Nissan Zs. And what I found on the standard, the performance, and also some Nismos, price is falling fairly rapidly, okay? And so I found like a performance model Nissan Z that was hardly any miles on it for under $40,000. If you took about 20 grand off this thing, right? You find a gently used one, maybe someone got one and they were like, ooh, if this ride is too harsh for me, I can't do that. And you start finding these in that $50,000 range, what this thing has versus an equivalent Supra with just its normal kind of sport or performance trim or whatever they call it in the Supra, now all of a sudden this thing is making a really good case for itself. It's very powerful, well-tuned. I know someone in our neighborhood had that loud of a car. It can handle itself on a track or a great back road, and you might be able to live with that suspension if this is a second fun or weekend car. So that's kind of how I feel about the Nismo Z. Like when you look at a $70,000 price tag and you look at the interior materials and the semi-manual like HVAC controls and stuff like that, not great, right? But then you look at what this thing can do. You look at the smile it puts on your face from behind the wheel, especially if you're driving it like an a-hole, and you're like, yeah, but this is a lot of fun. And there is a lot of car here, just maybe not $70,000. So look for those deals down the road. I don't think, at least in the short term, the Nissan Z's resale value is really gonna be all that great. I don't think people are gonna be like, oh man, the Z was underappreciated. I think they will maybe in 10 or 20 years, but not in the next 5. So I think there's a window of opportunity here when it comes to a car like this. Okay, full disclosure, last time we had the Nissan Z, I'll put the link below, it was like the dead of winter and the weather was terrible, and I was like, the Nismo, and I was like, this car is not it for the winter. It is not a good car to drive in the winter. But now, it's the beginning of fall in Atlanta. The weather has been spectacular this week, and I'm kind of falling in love with the Nissan Z in general. And this Nismo one, it's not making the decision any easier.